Welcome to Unorthodox Perspectives with your host, Luke Burrows.
I think like your mission, your vision, your purpose, your passion, it's all interlinked.
And Leroy Mabonga.
Discipline is the first step to control.
All right, guys, we are here for episode 14 of the podcast. Hope everyone's having an awesome Monday. And today, guys, as you can see, we have Paige joining us. Paige, welcome to the show.
Thank you both so much for having me.
No, it's our pleasure. Leroy, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you. How about yourself?
I'm awesome, man. I'm really good. So, guys, Paige is a career fulfillment expert, and so today we're going to be talking all about one's career, how to kind of navigate finding the right career for you that's really centered around your values and your passion ultimately. And this is something that I'm really passionate about as well, so I'm really happy that we've been able to bring Paige onto the show today. But before we dive into it, Paige, if you wouldn't mind, would you kind of like explain more about what you do, how you help people, who you are, and then, we'll dive into the conversation.
Sure. So I'm living in Colorado. I'm in the U.S., born and raised. And my story, if you will, really centers around my natural instinct for curiosity. So growing up, I've always been really fascinated with human behavior, relationships, how we communicate. And so, I think the emphasis on how can I use my natural skills and talents into a profession was always kind of ingrained even as a kid. Like, what am I actually going to do? And so when I learned about psychology and I pursued my bachelor's in psychology and I have my master's in counseling as well, kind of going on that trajectory of mental health. It really was in alignment at the time because it's to have that understanding, have that compassion for other people. And I reached a point where being a counselor in the therapy space, it wasn't for me anymore. It was really draining. I was feeling a lot of burnout and a lot of overwhelm because I was putting myself before other people. The compassion that I had for others was kind of, it just took so much out of me that I cared so much, but I wasn't taking care of my own mental health. So after I graduated, I had to think, what else do I want to do with my life? I still want to work with people. I want to make an impact. I love people's stories and learning about them, but how can I use that as a profession? So I looked into life coaching. And so I enrolled in a coaching institute. I became accredited. A lot of the counseling skills I use from graduate school and my experience on the field, I still use today. But career coaching is kind of where I landed, really focusing on that career transition and why people stay at the jobs that they are, even if they're depressed or they love their jobs, like really being curious about that whole transition. So what I do as a career fulfillment coach is I work one-on-one with clients all over the world, just asking them these powerful questions about who do you want to be? Where do you want to work? Why? Like, what is your why? Why are you doing this? Because we spend so many hours of our lives at work. I think I was reading a stat. It was like 90,000 hours of work of our lives. Like, that's so much time. So why not do something that brings meaning to you, the impact that you want to make, and just get a little more clear on your vision. So I really help clients identify that.
That's amazing. And I think in this episode, I'm going to be doing a lot of head nodding and just agreeing with everything that you're saying ultimately, because, from like somebody who left college and got like a business apprenticeship, went to work in a company, and like, I'll be honest with you, like I hated it. It led me to like hitting depression, anxiety, like severe anxiety in that. And so now I've come to the conclusion exactly the same as you were sharing, that if we're not doing work that we enjoy, work that we love, work that brings meaning, then like seriously, what are the point? Like, what are we doing here? I always say that work is such a huge part of our life, and you've just backed it up with the stats. And so I think the first question I have is from the work that you've been doing so far, obviously with the coaching. Why do people therefore just stay in jobs they hate? Is it because, they have to pay the bills and so they just get in these habits and these ruts? Like, what are some of the things that you're finding out of why people are staying in these jobs that they hate?
That's such a great question. There's so many factors. A lot of it has to do with your environment, whether that's your parents or society telling you what job you should or should not have. And what you brought up of like finances, like that's a huge reason why people stay, is because they're scared to take that risk and lose their current income. Which is totally valid. I'm not the coach that promotes quit your job, like find something else. Like, sure, if you can quit your job, go for it. But I also want to be practical as well. But yeah, I think your environment, who shapes you, who's telling you, either explicitly or not, like what you should and should not do. And then also a lot of it comes with just fear of the unknown. If I take a risk, if I go to school for a completely different career, if I, apply for a job that I don't think I'm not qualified for, they just stay in their own comfort zone. And I think it's like you said, also it's just habits. It's just what we know and it's what we're comfortable with. But it's funny that the burnout, the stress, the depression, the anxiety, all of those negative symptoms are our comfort. Like that sucks. That sucks that it is becomes so natural to feel those things. And so with that, there's no room for change because they already accepted that as their reality.
Absolutely. Leroy, I'll bring you in here.
Yeah, it sounds like from what Paige is saying, it sounds like it becomes a vicious circle where it's almost like what you find comfort in is what's restricting you from growing, and it's a painful thought, to be honest. And I think what you touched upon, Paige, on like even the influences we have, like our parents, like society. The thing about jobs, like what you said, like it's not telling everyone to quit their job straight away and find something new straight away, and that it's not. But I think it's more of a question of, have you found your way? If that makes sense. Have you found your way? It's like asking someone, wherever you are, have you found your way? Are you on your way? And I don't mean that in a literal sense, but it's from within. It's there's this internal walk we are all on, and when we come to a milestone, sometimes we can almost become so comfortable when we take the rest or when we take that moment in and we find that elation, and seeing anything beyond that almost seems like, why make the effort when I'm just okay, when I'm just okay. So the justification becomes like, it's like when you ask yourself, like, but am I satisfied with how far I've come? It's like then there's this question that like, but what do you have to gain by going anywhere else? Like, you're okay right here. And like that's why I say, like what she said, like that vicious circle now. It's like you're literally stopping yourself from finding out more of this way, of your way, and I think it's an internal question for me. I think it comes to like, have you found your way?
That's absolutely beautiful. Yeah. Go ahead, Luke.
No, absolutely, Leroy. And I think that kind of comes onto a point, maybe of some of the work that you do, Paige, in around kind of like values, right? And I think that before I kind of got into the personal development world and read a book by Tony Robbins, I had no idea about like value, like life values. Like it brought up life values, and I was like, what? Like, what are these? Like, what are these? Because my consciousness, I guess, was just like zero, And so do you feel like that's a challenge that most people face and could be one of the reasons behind what kind of we're talking about here, what Leroy shared, is that kind of consciousness around, well, actually, what are my values? Actually, what are the things in my life that I value? Do people just like not know that? I guess it's because it's not really taught at school, but be interested to get your thoughts on that.
Absolutely. I think it's interesting when I come across someone, only because I've made my my circle, my community, the people who I call my friends, call my family, value self-development, value self-awareness so much. So when I do have interactions with clients, people down the street that just have no awareness or consciousness of like, oh, I didn't even know that was an option, that I can like make a choice for myself. Like, just when they're so dumbfounded by it, it like shocks me, but that's only because I'm biased, right? And I only know my personal, development world. So when clients come up to me, and I have on one of my my questionnaires, because I offer a free consultation. And so I ask them to just fill out a quick questionnaire. And one of them is, what are your values? Do you know what your values are? To just give me an idea, is that even on their radar? And some responses are, yeah, it's this, this, this. And some of them are like, I'm not too sure. I think it's this. Because like you said, Luke, like it's not taught in school really, unless you take the time to listen to personal development podcasts, read Tony Robbins books. Like, unless you put yourself out there, it's not going to be as second nature. So I think when I work with clients, getting to the core of your values, understanding what that truly means, how you can identify them, just more education about it, because at the end of the day, also knowing that your values change. Just like you, as you grow, your values will also grow with you. For example, like if you valued education as a little kid, because your parents are pounding you in the brain, education is number one, that's it, that's it, that's it. So of course, like you embody that, but maybe by the time you're 30 years old, you don't give a shit about it anymore. Or maybe it is a part of you, but it's not your top three anymore. So just also understanding that values will change of what's important to you as you learn and become the person you're becoming.
Absolutely. And I think on that point as well, like just with the education point, it could be now you value more like self-education, right? Like, reading the personal development books, doing the podcasts and that, listening to the podcasts and that. Kind of just staying on values for a minute, Paige. I'm curious, how did you bring more consciousness to your own values? And then Leroy, I'll ask you the same question as well. So if we go to Paige and then you, Leroy, like what did that process look like for you?
So I worked at an eating disorder hospital, and I worked there for 5 years. And, I was surrounded by counselors, psychiatrists, dietitians, like in our treatment modality at that hospital was around values. So even as an employee, like understanding that is the core principle of how we want to treat our patients. We want to ask the patients what's important to them to help them stay in their recovery. So I really learned more about values in my job. And they actually had these value cards, if you will, and you can purchase them on like Amazon or whatever, but it's like a value sort cards. So it's like literally hundreds of just this stack of cards. And I worked with therapists like on our lunch break. I was like, let's sort our values. Like, let's just do this, whatever. So I had someone else assist me. But basically you sort it all out. She asked me a couple of questions, and I was just able to kind of pick and go through the deck. And when I found like my top 5, I had to just ask myself, like, are these really important to me at this time in my life? Or was this actually a value that isn't really mine, but I think it's mine? So it made me challenge just by staring at this list of words, because also we associate, values differently, right? Like Leroy and Luke could have a different explanation for what empathy means, even if we all share the same thing. So I think that is kind of how it developed, was someone else challenging me, but literally just starting with a list of words and asking myself, like, what is really important and what do I want to focus on to make these decisions for my life.
That's powerful. That's powerful. I think for me, it probably was when I dropped out of uni, to be honest. Like a bit of a backstory for me, Paige, is that I kind of, well, I didn't kind of, I did. But yeah, I dropped out of uni, but after that, that's when I kind of started this entrepreneurial journey, self-development, like, a focus. And yeah, it's led me to where I am today, with a number of projects and businesses, and, everything's going well, which I thank God for. And but for my own personal values, I guess it's tied into that as well. Through that development, I think before that happened, all through my life, like exactly what you said, Paige, like, when you're young, you have different values. And I was someone who was quite, bright at school. So like from a very young age, I always knew myself, like, yeah, on average, I can be okay in school. And, results wise, yeah. And even in college, like, I got really good results, like from just knowing that I can do this, So those values enabled me to really, like, almost extrapolate as much from whatever action or practical, like, thing that I was focused on. And I guess when I came to uni now, and it's a different environment, you're very, like, self-motivated. You have to take yourself to the classes, do the revision, there's no tutor or, telling you to do such and such, get this in deadline. And my awareness to my own values became, I'm someone who's deeply, like, spiritual, and I think deeply about quite a lot of my things. And the transition to uni for me, mentally, spiritually, and it was something where, like, I knew now I'm not under the authority of my own parents. I am my own sort of, like, driver now. Like, I don't necessarily have to go and find authority before I do anything in my life. So when everything started breaking down for me, uni just wasn't really going well. And I kept saying to myself, like, everything happens for a reason at that time. Like, I was like, but I know I'm better than these results. But I just kept going, and come to the second year, I dropped out at the end of it, and focusing now on myself, like coming back home to Devon, and like just being out in nature, and like, really just coming to this point of stripping self, stripping that self that I knew from the time when, I was growing up, all those values, like, that I thought, like, I actually valued from my own parents, from my own, just a lot of things. Like, it was a period where I was away from everyone. I was always in the mountains or something, and I was questioning quite a lot and really drilling down to the roots of my own value, like my own values, like, and it got to a point where I set my own parents down, and I was like, okay, this is who I am. This is I understand you may have this sort of perception of me, and like, but I am going to, act in this way, but it is in no way conflict, but it's just to say, this is me being, full stop, and we are all beings. I think that's one thing that I've come to learn from all this, like, and my own values from that point onwards to now. Yeah, I think values are entwined to what you almost become in life. How can I put this? Like, because of how I now started seeing myself from that point onwards, as much as I dropped out of uni, I was about to go back to university, by the way, and do psychology. I think one thing I was very interested about this is that you did something that I literally thought to do for the second run at university. Like literally after dropping out the second year, I thought, let me go back, and so I applied. And I got offers for a psychology course, and I was so excited because I really found out that I actually love psychology, and almost for all the reasons you have, like to get into the mental space. But for me, it was more now just for the being to become more, to help people and block people from like the things that we feel like they're holding us down, and so when I got rejected to go back through student finance, I sort of like took that self-development, like learning way, like what Luke was saying, like you almost become your own, you have to be very disciplined, you have to be very like, and it becomes a point where your values now are entwined to what you want to become. So then they're amplified into everything you are trying to do, and it's different now. I think when we go back to the first question on like, why is it that people don't want to leave their jobs? Because our values at that point, they are not really almost transacting into practical things for you to actually see that value, in turn, like the value you feel becomes what you manifest, and that reflection, I feel like, is what I have found that, like you said as well, they change as you grow your values. And I think over time I've realized as I'm changing in my own values, I'm seeing that my life around as well is also changing as I am, but there's no conflict. And I guess that's something that people, I think you can almost not see that your own deep personal values are hidden under so many layers of values that you really haven't really thought that, and you don't see how much they're actually like manifesting, in your life, or actually a big part to how you actually act out your being. Sorry, I talk, but yeah. But
I
yeah.
think that's Leroy. No, I think that's good, and I think that's something that I want to kind of pick up on, especially. So there's a couple of points there that maybe Paige, like you can help the audience with, especially when Leroy was saying like going to his parents and saying like, this is who I am, and just the whole kind of point on, I suppose, like society's kind of like all these different values, and then ours is like really underneath, and so we got to find it, find our values, etc. Because I feel like that can be hard. Like those conversations can be hard if it's with friends or family. So how do you help people to actually, how am I going to word this? Not necessarily listen to kind of all the voices, like all the outer voices, and find that inner voice, I guess, to then find their own values and to find that career that's for them, if that makes sense. Because there's so much noise, right? There's so much noise out there. What does that process look like?
Yeah. I think you're right that there's so much noise out there, and just like as we're, business owners and we're learning and growing about our businesses, that's a lot of noise as well, right? Like do this, do that, do this for your first year, have this as your goal. Like I kind of relate it back to that because this is the first time for me that I am my own boss, that I am my own tutor, like you're saying. And so to tune out the noise is not realistic. So, but there has to be a balance. So I don't think it's natural or healthy to completely like, okay, screw everyone, block all of it. Like I'm only gonna, you know what I mean? But we don't want other people's opinions to get meshed into ours, where then we're just lost and confused. Like an easy example is like morning routine, right? You read all these books, you hear all these stories about if you don't have your morning routine will help you create success, right? But if you're only doing a morning routine because other people are doing it, I mean, it could work, but like be really curious with your own voice. So I guess some feedback or some advice I would give if you are feeling a lot of noise, a lot of chaos of other people are telling you what to do, other people are laying out like these paths for you. Just take it one voice at a time. And also be curious of like, what are they trying to really tell me? Like, what is the actual message? If your parents have a very strong message of you should do X, take it for what it is. Do they mean it in a very literal sense? Or are they just saying that to protect you? Are they just saying that because maybe they're just really scared they don't want to see you fail? So kind of interpret the noise a little bit of what is this noise, these messages really trying to say. And I think just going back to your values of, does this align? If my top value is family, freedom, and integrity, and there's these jobs, these relationships that aren't aligned with that, then that's when I know like I need to cut this off. So long story short, try to identify again your values, what's important to you, and then just assess the rest of the noise if that's something you actually really need to hear or if it's something you can just blow off.
Yeah, and I think that so let's just kind of take parents as an example here. I like what kind of Leroy was sharing with his journey, and his story of like actually going and have that difficult hard conversation. Have you worked with people who, let's say, have maybe tried that? Because, if there's tension in the room, I feel like, for me anyway, deal with it ultimately. I suppose that I've a lot of people that I know and everything in the audience and stuff, I'm sure we would have faced this, that actually sometimes, you may go and have that conversation with your parent, or anyone, but if then they don't want to listen, or if that conversation doesn't go as you want it to go, I don't know. Like, do you have any advice or any thoughts like around that? Like, if somebody is maybe sitting down with their parent and going, I want to do this career path, but there's still that negativity there, and like they're actually trying, right, to fix the relationship, I guess, that I get a bit, and face that tension. Yeah, I'm kind of interested on like your take on that, and if you have any advice on like, okay, well, what to do from that, like what to do next.
Well, first, before you have the conversation with your parents or whoever it is, what is your intention? What is your intention with this conversation? Am I walking into this conversation and I'm asking for a specific outcome? Am I requesting approval? Am I requesting support? Am I requesting them to just listen to me? Like, go in first asking for what you want, because that way the recipient is going to be more open because you're putting out there what you're expecting. So yeah, first ask yourself, like, why am I even having this conversation? And if it is like, I want to tell my parents I want to do this career path, even though they completely disagree. Well, what do you, I guess, like, and if you know that they are going to lash out or they're going to kick you out of the house or, whatever it is, like, think about like ultimately what's going to be the safest option for you, mentally, physically, just looking out for yourself, because, although your parents love you, they probably raised you, like they want what's best for you usually. I think it's this confidence that you need to have of, I'm scared, I don't know what's going to happen, but I would really appreciate your support. And if they can't give it to you, just know there are so many people in this world that can be your family, that can be supportive to you, even if they're not blood. Like, so many people want to help you achieve your dreams. Like, there's people out there, you can hire coaches, there's friends, like just us chatting on the internet right now. Like, it's an amazing tool that we have, that people want to hear you and people want to help. So it sucks that it can't, if that's how it goes down, that your parents ultimately can't help you and support you. Just really remember that you're doing the best you can and you're doing what's right for you, because at the end of the day, you wake up in the morning and you look in the mirror and that's you. You are your best advocate. So do what you need to do to take care of yourself.
Yeah, 100%. In the time that we have left, I think we have about 15 minutes left with you, Paige. If I will kind of want to move on to the workplace, because I know that we wanted to talk about kind of that burnout in the workplace should not be the norm ultimately. I mean, it very much comes into the conversation around career. I guess that when one finds that career that's aligned to their values, aligned to their passion, and their, working that job, long hours is in everything, sometimes burnout can occur. So I'd be interested to kind of get your perspective on this, and any tips that I guess that you have for the audience who might be experiencing this or on the verge of experiencing it.
Sure. The folks that are experiencing burnout in the workplace. Yeah. So I think we touched on it a little bit earlier about kind of those negative symptoms of burnout, like anxiety, depression, overwhelm. And when we're experiencing those, and how when it starts to become like normalized, when you've accepted those symptoms, that's a big red flag, because life is not, I believe, this is my own belief, but I don't believe that we're meant to suffer every day. I think growing pains are natural and healthy, and they could be cues, whether it's, physically in your body, you're feeling physical aches or anything, like what's your body trying to tell you. But as a whole, I think in general, we're not supposed to feel this burnout. So what I'd recommend is identifying your burnout first and foremost, whether that's you're writing on a piece of paper, you're making a voice memo, just get it out there of what you're experiencing. What about your job sucks? Are there physical, mental, physical, spiritual symptoms of just feeling yucky? Like what exactly is it? And after you identified all of those stages of burnout, what's the first one you want to tackle? Figuring out like what's the closest step to feeling a little bit better? Like what will instantly put you in a good mood? Is it listening to your favorite song on the way to that dreadful job? Like what could be that little pump up, that little confidence? Or what could be a mantra that you say, or an affirmation that you say to yourself? Like, for example, when I experienced, when I was working at a job that did not serve me, but I came in every single day and I was hating it, I still had this mantra in my head of this is only temporary. And that released so much of that burden of like, oh my God, this is forever. So, what's a mantra, a sentence, an affirmation that you could also share, in your head of like, I'm going to get through this, or like, this is my stepping stone, So identify what you're experiencing, see what you actually want. Like, what about this job would make it better? Is it a better relationship with your boss? Like, do you need to set up a conversation with them? Like, just be a little curious, identify what it is, figure out what you actually want, and then make tiny little steps to feel a little bit better. And it's not going to happen overnight too. So also be patient and graceful with yourself. That burnout, because over time you've accumulated this burnout. And so over time it will decrease. So just being patient with yourself too.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. Leroy, do you have any questions for Paige at all?
Hold on, give me 1 minute.
Okay. No problem, man. No problem. So yeah, I think that's really important. Like, I'm a huge Gary V fan. And he says all the time. Well, I've heard him say a lot because I'm a huge fan. So I listen to kind of all of this stuff, right? Like don't judge yourself ultimately, And I think that kind of really comes into the point that you were making there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. If you are your own worst critic, then there's not much you're gonna get done. When you're constantly like picking up the bat and just bashing your head up against the wall or whatever, you're not going to go anywhere. You can have all the steps in the world. You can have everyone telling you exactly what to do to have this perfect life. But if you continue to judge yourself and feel like shit, it's just going to be that much harder for you to be in a different mindset. So be very graceful and try to notice those judgmental thoughts that are occurring in your head. That self-talk is also like what I work with my clients on, is what are those instant messages that, if you're talking shit about yourself or maybe you're saying great things, like just have that awareness of what are you actually saying.
Yeah, that's really good, because there was something you mentioned beforehand that I could totally relate to, because I always told especially at my lowest point, right? Like I always told myself that when I was in that job that I hated, that like I'm going to be here forever, which thinking about it just added to the anxiety. It's kind of like funny how that works, right? Like I tell myself that story. Of course, that's going to make me feel more anxious because I don't necessarily like being here, And so I think becoming more, just slowly over time, more aware to those stories you tell yourself is very important. So yeah, definitely thank you for sharing that. Leroy, do you have any questions?
No, actually.
No, you don't.
I've just been observing. I've just been listening. But I don't know.
What are you feeling, Leroy? What are you feeling right now?
Semblance. I don't know why that word has been echoing in my head. Semblance. I don't even know what it means. I don't remember what it means. If you can search up the meaning for me quickly, Luke. I don't know if you can search up the word meaning of semblance, and then maybe I might be able to. Yeah, semblance. SEMBLENCE. Semblance. I think.
No idea what it means, Laurie. Nothing is coming up.
Nothing.
I think you may have just made that up.
I might have, but I don't know. But I don't know. Like from everything I've heard, I guess I would just put it into this. It's like you almost have to find your own wave length, amongst this noise. It's like we have these waves going on, but like you almost have to find your own wave, if that makes sense. No pun intended. But like it's like Paige said something about not shutting everything out. It's not gonna last, because at the end of the day, we are part of something greater. We are part of something. You are. So as part of something as we are, and as much as we may be in so many different things, circumstances, jobs, and we have things going on in ourselves, and our minds, I think it becomes a point of just finding that self. Like you mentioned that when you're talking to your parents, like and you're trying to put across what is your intent, what is your intent. And my intent was just basically to say, this is my being, like my actions and like my thoughts, like I will express them, but do not expect them to come as you may perceive, and we all have different things that we want the world to understand about us. And it's in us understanding that it's okay for us to have those within us, and for the world to actually hear what we have, so that we can actually have that's where the diversity becomes beautiful. because now we are adding the beauty that we all come from a unique place in individuality, and in that uniqueness we're able to now share with others, and finding that enables us now to actually see how you can bound yourself to your own values, and understand that in whatever job you may find yourself, excuse me, and on whatever job you may find yourself, burning out and thoughts of anxiety and thoughts of just feeling this place of displacement, and then we find ourselves in diseases. It's these diseases, it's diseases because you are not at ease, and it's all in us just not hearing our own voice being heard, if that makes sense. And I guess this word, for me, it just meant like it's the uniqueness of all being heard at an harmonious frequency, and that for me, it feels like that's where there is that semblance, I guess. But yeah, that's my thoughts really. I didn't really have any questions, but yeah, I've got so much, but I know you have to go, and it's been really a beautiful conversation. I've enjoyed it. Yes, man. I'll pass it back to you.
It's right. No, like we can stay behind and kind of just wrap this episode up. I know, Paige, that you have to go, but I want people to be able to follow you. So where's the best place for them to get in touch, follow you, learn more about what you do, and connect and reach out maybe?
Perfect. Yeah. So my website, www.paigemitchell.coach, just has all the bio info if you want to book an appointment. Follow me on Instagram at paigemitchell.coach. Same with Facebook. It's the same handle. LinkedIn as well. I offer a free 30-minute consultation, and we can schedule that. We could do it on WhatsApp if you're international, or Zoom or whatever. So yeah, if you're even just curious about life coaching in general, I offer that free call. So feel free to just schedule a session. We can get really clear on your goals and all things talking about burnout. You can also download my free ebook. It's burnouthandbook.paigemitchell.coach. And you just can download that, and it covers the top 5 signs of overwhelm and 5 ways to recover. So amazing. Yeah, feel free to reach out.
Awesome. So guys, if you're listening on the podcast, then all those links will be in the description. So it should be around this episode. So just click on the links. And Paige, before I let you go, do you have any final thoughts or words of inspiration that you would like to share?
I say the hardest part for me is like just to get started, because I have these like perfectionism, qualities that I've had since I was a kid of everything has to be right. Everything has to be perfect. And so the more when I open my business, the more I let that go. So for anyone that's listening, that's like super scared, either you want to start your own business or you want to do this job that you don't even know you're qualified for, like just get started, and you will be so surprised with who you will connect with, what you will learn, and what you will grow. Like, I'm just so grateful to be on this platform with both of you, having these beautiful conversations, and you're already like on the other side of the world. Like, this is just so cool. And it just means so much to me that we can connect this way. So get out there, just get started, take the smallest step to achieve your dreams.
Absolutely. Well, Paige, thank you for coming on the show today. It's been a blast. And I can see us doing some more collaborations in the future. So
absolutely.
That would be amazing. Thank you for your time. Perfect.
Thanks so much, guys.
Take care.
Awesome. So that was a great conversation. Leroy, I do want to ask you, so 2 things. This semblance thing, what's that?
I don't even know where this word came from. Like, yeah, I'm actually gonna go and do some research.
Some research. I mean, I did type it in, but yeah.
Because I do. Maybe it's not the same. Maybe it's not the right spelling. Yeah, maybe it's not the right spelling. But that's just the spelling that came to my head, because I spend quite a lot of time on the dictionary. Like and you know, and I know it's yeah, I don't know, but I'll find that, find it, and I'll next time, the next episode, I'll try and mention it on what I find. But yeah, man, like I guess I guess in my mind it just it sort of like just took everything into one, in what I was saying before Paige left, and how like our values are entwined to how we will practically see our lives manifest, you know. And it's almost like everything that we then find ourselves like I don't know, that disconnection. You almost feel like you're disconnected as much as you're connected with so many people. You know many people. You can go to work. You can go to parties. But you feel disconnected. And I feel like that's something that we struggle with quite a lot. Like that's something that makes you, yeah, you know, like it makes you feel like this job, you know, is it right? All those kind of questions. And I feel like there is a point where, as a child, you're very vocal and you're very like unapologetic, because in the vicinity or in the environment of your family, they have accepted you for who you are. And that in itself, like when you're very young, like you're told like, oh yeah, that's just who you are. Oh yeah, that's just who, that's just that's, yeah, he climbs on the walls, he's just always, you know. And it's characteristics that are just enabled because they're given space to be. But there comes a point when society starts trying to shape you into a mold that enables you to be civilized, as everybody can see you in a similar form. And that in itself can it can almost cause that disruption between you understanding what your true value is in life and how you want to see that manifest as you practice your own being in life. Does that make sense?
It's about identity. You know, like I completely faced that. You know, when I was, you know, I would go out with friends or something, and you would be around people, but yet feel so alone. You know, and so then I kind of coined the term, or was sharing at that time a lot about that. Actually, it's not necessarily being around lots of people, because like I would rather be here, you know, like here right now, I'm alone, right? Because I'm the only one in the room, but I don't necessarily feel like lonely. And so there's like this difference, right? Where then, you know, I was around lots of people, so I wasn't necessarily alone, but in that moment I felt lonely, you know, like even though I was around these people, because it comes back to what you were saying around like that identity. You know, I didn't know necessarily who I was, like where I think fit is the wrong, potentially the wrong word, or where I like stood out the most, or because I had no idea what around my life values, you know, I had no idea around those core values, or I did see. Now this is an interesting thing. Maybe I did necessarily know what my values were, but I wasn't consciously living them because of the societal pressure, and you know, like growing up, like I was, you know, late teens, and I was somebody that very much wanted to keep obviously I wanted to be happy myself, but like I wanted to keep other people happy as well. Like the people around me, I wanted them to be happy, you know, it's like friends, family. And so just kind of like falling into these habits of doing things that maybe I didn't necessarily want to do, but you know, I'll do it because I'm gonna keep them happy, or impress, like trying to impress people, you know, oh, I want to impress them. Yeah, and so just kind of losing my way, like losing that identity then, it's become a big thing for me and just so many other people in general. I did want to ask, when you had that conversation with your parents, how did that go? I'm really interested by that, because that is something that I feel like a lot of people, or just any hard conversation, any hard difficult conversation, even if it's like somebody's spouse or somebody's girlfriend or boyfriend or whoever it is. Like so often we don't want to have that hard conversation. And I am completely, me too, I'm not perfect, those hard conversations, like hard, like, it's a hard conversation. So I'm really interested to kind of, how was that for you? Like, how did that go? Like, share more, man.
I will describe it like this first. Yeah. Imagine coming out from it's hailing outside and it's raining and you're feeling, and there's wind everywhere, and imagine that. And then the moment you walk inside the door, right, and you close it, right, do you know that sense of relief? That sense of like that quietness from the noise. That sense of,
and you're just drenched.
Yes, you're just drenched, but you are so glad that you can take this off.
Yeah.
This jacket, these boots, this like you can even, and that is how I felt after the conversation. And before the conversation, I'll get into that now in the literal account. So in describing how I felt, I guess it was that sense where, for so long in my life, I felt like I was just always conflicted with so many thoughts, especially because I regard my parents highly. So I regard their opinion highly. So in whatever I'm trying to do in my life, I'm constantly thinking, how will they see me, kind of thing. And you can borderline like cross over to wanting to be as they see you, and I guess that can make you feel like you're going against the wind. Sometimes you feel like the rain is just falling on you. You feel like there's hail coming at you. You just feel like you're just at it. But having that conversation, for me, it opened the door for to be at comfort within myself, within who I am, within being who I am. To them, to the world, and to them, to my close ones, and to the world. And that's how it is. It's like, because they are the closest, it's like they are in your inner being, like they in the physical representation of it. If we take family in that sense, where they are your inner, and unless you can be there in your inner sense, in your inner being, you find it hard to be without, right? We say that in our individual sense. And in the family sense, whenever you find, why is it that we say, they've been brought up from a good home, they're bad, they're home, blah, blah, blah. Because at the end of the day, you are the product of wherever you've come in from, right? And that for me is how I felt. How it came out, like the outcome of that conversation, it was like I literally had everything down to paper. Like I wrote what I wanted to say, how I'm gonna say it, like this and that. Like I had a serious plan, because I knew them to also take me seriously, and I also didn't want to fluff about, because I knew it was gonna be a very high pressured moment. Like this is something that I've never done, like really spoke my thoughts and like at free will, like how I am and who I am and what. And so I had to write it down, like, and to really know the points I'm trying to get across, so that after the conversation I do not feel like I didn't have my boots on, I didn't have my jacket on, I didn't have my hat on, I didn't have my umbrella. Do you get me? I got that across, no matter how much their thoughts may have been coming from a different perspective. Like at that time in the conversation, as it turns out, nothing ever happens as you predict, right?
Picture it. Yeah,
as you picture it, until you enter into that vision and actually act on it. Do you know what I mean? Because you've seen that vision. I saw the vision of me sitting them down and talking to them. That's the first thing you have to remember. If you have seen it, then it's possible. It's just, as always saying at the beginning of the podcast, that sometimes then you push yourself down with those thoughts that say, nah, you can't do it. They're not gonna listen to you. Nah, they're just gonna push you down. Nah, they're just gonna. But you know what? I told myself I'm gonna do it, so that I tell myself that I have done it. when I'm now acting as I know I want to do, at least I know I've tried to bridge, this gap of understanding that we have with my parents by actually being very honest with them. So whenever they see me going forward with however I turn out and manifest my life, there is no way they can say I have never tried to actually talk to them, to actually understand and bring about how I see the world to them, so that we can actually be. So the outcome of the conversation was we sat down and I started, I spoke about whatever it is that I wanted to talk to them about, and then surprisingly, like my parents are quite like my dad is quite laid back, he's quite calm, so he's quite open minded, but he voiced out his thoughts, and it was a point where it it had me feeling that sense of independence even more, like it had me really like in a place of like, now it's like I was cutting it was like I was cutting the umbilical cord,
Yeah.
that it was this umbilical cord that we feel from a very young age. As much as we cut the physical one, there's still the mental umbilical cord that we are all on when we were under our parents. And for a long time, if we do not realize that in order for us to go anywhere, you wouldn't be growing as you are if you still had the umbilical cord on, tied. Sorry to be so like,
No
literal,
apologies needed.
or
Like I like the analogy you're making. I think that's a powerful one. Like we obviously cut the physical one, but there's kind of still this like this. I still feel like there's always an attachment, like to your family or whatever it is. There's always obviously that attachment, and that attachment is important. Like we all love our family, right? But yeah, this kind of almost. Yeah, just this other kind of attachment that is like that we need to kind of work through, like, maybe always trying to make them proud and kind of all these other different things, where actually coming into the mindset of like that you are enough, like as you are ultimately, like, yes, continue to grow, but you don't necessarily have to, like, you don't owe your parents anything, like you don't, like for me, so partly for me, it's like, just so much gratitude ultimately for being like here, right? Just like so much gratitude for being born, like being one of the 7.8 trillion, like whatever the number is now of the population, like I'm here. And so like just so much gratitude for that, while also this kind of realization, like none of us asked to be born. Like, so why do we then feel like we owe the people who brought us into the world something as well? Like it's kind of like this balance I feel between like that, just that gratitude of actually being here, while also that you are, as you said, like you are your own independent person, and you can go out there and use your talents and gifts and that to, for me anyway, to try and create some sort of impact and change. And you don't owe anyone anything, apart from ultimately yourself, to become the best person that you can ultimately become. And for me, create some sort of impact or change in the world. And that can be on like a small level or on like a huge level. Like it's all relevant for me, it's all important and it's all relevant. So what I did want to ask was, did that conversation change the dynamic of the relationship? Like, or how did it change the dynamic of the relationship, if you think it did?
I like how you rephrase that question, because it's ultimately, that's an effect that always happens. I think that's something I'm just gonna say before I answer that, is that dynamics will always change, because like you said, you are part of something greater, this 1.7 billion of us, like, so in that being part of that already, whatever you do, you will change the dynamics of this world. Do you know what I mean? No matter the small or big scale it is. So even in internal relations now we have the outcome of our dynamics was that they started seeing me not as their child, not as a little boy or as young and small, but they started to have more respect because now if you show something, right, that you are, there's no reason for someone to deny it, and they can only respond to you as you are. Does that make sense? So in that point, it's like in me expressing that fact that I respect myself. Don't so I'm gracefully asking that you do not disrespect me, and understand that as much as I may not be working in the way you may have thought is best for me, understand that I do have an understanding of what I am trying to do with my life, and I do know what is also best for myself. So I am going to follow what's best for myself before I start following what you may think is best for me, because I'm walking in these shoes and not you, right? So in a respectful manner, obviously,
Yeah, but
That's
also with that, Leroy, so that's powerful, but also like the realization of like, and if this decision or if this choice or if this path ends up being the wrong path for whatever reason, then I'm gonna take the account. I'm accountable. Like it's my responsibility, and so that's ultimately how we learn and grow. And I feel like if we choose that path instead of somebody else choosing it for us, and then we take the responsibility, like that does so much for our character, that does so much for helping us grow, rather than somebody else choosing the path for us and then us like blaming them. Like I would much rather ultimately I would much rather be the captain of my own ship, like the driver, like actually
I'd
the
rather go
driver.
down with your own ship than than be a passenger.
Absolutely. Maybe I don't even know if this is relevant. It's probably not. But whenever I used to kind of go out with friends or anything, I always used to be the driver. Like every time. I was never the passenger, right? And once, actually, I was making a mistake once, and at the time, I was like, can somebody else drive? And I would always ended up driving, right? But actually, I suppose relating it back to this is like, if I'm the driver, then anything happens, I'm responsible, and so it's about, again, like I would much rather be the driver of the car, the captain of the ship, and then take that responsibility and learn the lessons from it than take a different path and then try and blame somebody else. And that doesn't mean like in my life like that always happens, but that's like that's like what I want to happen. That's my intention. That's kind of, as I said today, that's my intention of like how I ultimately want to navigate the rest of my life. And so I think there's ultimately something powerful in that.
Yeah, I think that's a powerful example and statement to the effect that like at the end of the day, there is that sense where we all have the choice. Like if you are somebody in the position that can drive and there is a vehicle that you can drive and there is a possible outcome that you may not want to see happen, but if you are in any position to make that to make any contribution to how that outcome comes off it, and it's not in conflict with anyone, then there's no reason for you to feel like you cannot. Does that make sense? And I feel like in that same way, when it comes back to what we're talking about, sometimes we come to the observation and calculation that, you know what, let me actually drive this point. But then our parents will be like, no, 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 sit the passenger seat, and or whatever influence we may find that is strong over our life, and we sit aside on our own life, that's our car, right? And we don't want, as much as we may say, I didn't want to take that direction, I didn't want to turn that down, I didn't want to go that way, but you are not even in any way form feeling in control. And I feel like it's very much like that conversation after having it, it's like they saw that I can drive. I didn't need them to be by my side and tell me to change the gear that way and to turn left and turn right. They realized that I didn't need lessons anymore. I didn't need, the L plates. It was now a point of like, just let me drive. If I, and it's like what you're saying there is like, if you think like leading your life based on somebody else's expectations, when you fail to meet them, you yourself are in a place where you feel lost and you do not even know where to go from that point onwards. And that is more demoralizing than a loss or an expectation that is not come off from your own self. Because like you said, you better learn off that. As the person who instigated and is responsible for it, you are in a place where you can learn. Whereas if I told you to do that, when you come to a failure, you'll be looking now to the person who said, my parents said I should do this. And now look, my friends said that you did it, now look. But when it's a personal point, you can look at that and see how, no, actually, as much as you failed, there's actually this route that it was actually leading you to, and then you find yourself, oh snap. And there's that form now, the self-development, like we were saying at the beginning, for me anyway, this is probably my closing remarks. But like, as we were saying in the beginning, that internal journey now, when we now see it now from everything we've spoken about, like the internal journey enables us to, because it's a self-development, it's self-tutelage. It's now a development that comes with wins and losses and lessons and step backs and all that. But in your perception of self-motivated outcome that you wish to see as you envisioned, it becomes a point where that internal journey, you can see your way. Like now I was saying, have you found your way? That question I was saying, like, and it's like you're constantly finding your way through that lesson, through that loss, through that high, through that low, through that expectation met, through that expectation failed. You're constantly finding your way. And that's the difference when it's your own personal drive and motivated livelihood. Whereas when it's from external points, you come to that point where the noise becomes so much that you cannot see your way throughout, and I feel like that confusion there that's happening is that we then start asking each other to meet our own failed expectations based on other people's influences on our partners, our loved ones, this is another conversation for another time. But
I get it. I get it, man. And it's powerful. I also think that there's kind of in a way relating it. Well, I suppose just in life, I was trying to relate it back to the whole episode about on like careers and everything as well. But just in life, there's always going to be people that's going to have opinions and think you should do this or think you should do that. And in a way, like, although I know what Paige was saying around you can't necessarily block everything out, I think over these past months, I've been learning a lot about the power of intuition, and I feel like we just have to recognize all this noise potentially, because it's other people's perspectives and it plays a part within our communities and within our environments. But we just have to really tune inwards to listen to that intuition ultimately, and to really tap into that. Because I've been learning a lot about intuition over the past, especially last month, and that I went for a few kind of courses about intuition and stuff, and that we can really tap into that. And I think that over time, as we grow older, we kind of lose that. But we really just have to tap into that really and listen to, okay, like what career path, like what career path do I want to go? Making this decision, that decision, and just kind of ultimately go from there.
And you're right, man. I think what you said there about like finding your own, it's like we need to see ourselves like a musical organ, you know. And if I am a flute and you're a piano, or I'm a guitar, or I'm a keyboard, there can be no conflict in our semblance, let me say.
Absolutely.
But they can only become beauty when we become harmonize, in harmony, and we find that harmony and we harmonize in a way that becomes beautiful. And I think the more we tune ourselves, like you're saying, we fine tune our own instrument. You are an instrument of yourself. You are an instrument of business and of motivation right now, in your publicly speaking and encouraging people to become more. Yeah, Luke. So in you being as you are today, you have become an instrument for others to play a bigger part in their own lives through your contributions in their life. Like, they're finding that they can be more of what it is that they want to become, and you think of all the ideas you are now having and all the thoughts that you have, like, on everything you've got coming, like, it's all because you are fine-tuning your instrument more and more and more. And as more people are playing that tune, in you being of service to others now, because you found your values and you are now sharing those values, the people, as they are feeding off your values, your tuning becomes refined, and that's why values are so important, because the more we tune ourselves to our own values, the more we can see what we can give as value to others, and the fine tuning becomes that the vicious cycle we're speaking of at the beginning becomes a beautiful, beautiful elevation cycle, as a friend of mine likes to say. She calls we don't change, she says we elevate every single time you know what I mean? So because you don't lose everything, you had, you've been, but you've just become more. So you elevate. We don't change, we elevate. So that's it, and yeah.
Awesome, man. Like, I really like that. And it kind of reminds me of, again, something I picked up recently. I'm going to completely mess this up, but it's kind of like so we start something new, and like the middle can sometimes feel like messy and that, but on the other side there's like this beautiful kind of thing that we create. I don't know, like but it just kind of reminded me of something that I've picked up recently, of kind of just that message of when you're in the transition, right? When you're in the process, maybe right now people who are listening to this, they're in the transition of a new career, or they're in the transition of just kind of raising their own consciousness and becoming more aware of their own values. Like, through this transition, the middle can be messy. The middle, because you're discovering all this out about yourself, and you're raising your own consciousness, and maybe you're realizing that these friends you grew up with, actually their values don't lie, and they're on completely different paths, and so you're making all these decisions. It feels like everything's kind of just not in order, like it's not how it used to be, and Leroy has gone, but guys, like, it's not how it used to be. But then you have the end, then you have not the end, because it's always like this long lifelong journey, but then you start to kind of come out of that and reach a beautiful.
I don't know what happened. Sorry.
You don't know what happened. No worries. I know. I kind of continued because there's people. But no, I was just kind of saying that the middle, basically, the message is that if people are going through people going through this process of self-discovery or personal growth or raising their own consciousness, the middle is messy, right? The middle can be messy because you're maybe implementing a new learning. The people around you don't necessarily agree with that. Like, you're now finding a new job. It can be messy, but just kind of like getting through that. On the other side is that life vision, right? That you see for your life, and so if your why is strong enough, and if that's strong enough, you just got to continue to progress forward, right? And just realize that the middle is messy, but you're going to get through it ultimately. So I think that would be some of my final thoughts. Ultimately, I think the conversation with Paige was awesome. I'm really passionate about helping people to become a better version of themselves, of course, but a part of that is career, a part of that is work. And like Paige was sharing, work is such a huge part of our lives. And if we're not doing something that we love, if we're not doing something that's in alignment with who we are, then Lira, I'm serious about this. Like, what are we doing here? Like, seriously, like, what are we doing here? Like, I understand people have responsibilities. I understand people have to pay the bills or whatever it is. But come on, like, so much of our waking life is focused on work. So much of our waking life is focused on our career. And so we just have to just not give a fuck what society says or what society thinks or what the pressures that other people put on us because it appeases their own, because it's what they believe in, not what, you know what I'm saying? Like, we just have to get into this kind of place of doing what we're like, ultimately doing what we love. I'm kind of running out of ways to say it. So I'm thinking I'm just gonna leave it there. Like, but what's your final thoughts? What's your final thoughts on that? For me, just if we're not doing what we love, then what are we doing here? And we really have to have a long, hard think about that question.
That's true. No, I think that's true. I think for me, final thoughts would be be, just be, because there's no need for you to find identity in something to invalidate your being, and I think the idea of to be, it's that's why we're constantly on the move. That's why we're constantly having something in our ears and we're listening to something, or we from the time we wake up to the time we sleep, like, even if it's the good things that we feel like the routine will help us do such and such, like, I think there's a space to be that we rarely ever enter into, and that is to literally have no, it's like you're constantly looking forward to something, but like you said, like, when you're trying to do something, there's a mess. In the middle, it's a mess. It's a mess. And in order for you to find any like sense in the mess is when you be, because like nature, trees, and we look at birds, we look at all these things that we find awe in. Trees especially I love because they teach us how to be, in being like still, right? In being still, in being where you are, in being just being, you are able to find your own place in an organized chaos. And when we find ourselves in such a place where we are being, we do not have any conflict to that which we feel like it's organized because somebody else is doing something totally different to how I see life. And that in itself, I think, like, the more we come to an accepting of that idea that in you being, and now I'm saying now that remove yourself from the routine that you feel like you need to fulfill for whatever reason, and just be who you are, and value that, enjoy that, have joy with that, like, literally just enjoy that. Like, if it's a bath, you feel like, if you walk, whatever it is, because in that you find that organized chaos such as nature becomes organized chaos within yourself as you become this one beautiful thing, right? Because if you think, if you're in the woods, you hardly see the beauty as much as when you see the landscape, right? And that's what it is sometimes. We're in these woods within ourselves, but when we see ourselves as one and part of something greater, as such a tree in a forest is one, but something greater. We see beauty in that one tree as much as we see in everything else, like when we're looking at the landscape. And that's my final thoughts, I guess. I talk too much sometimes, but I guess I'm trying to put the point across to say, hey, just love yourself, you know, begin to take an interest in yourself, you know, and yeah, amplify those interests and actually, like, you know what, say I am a really, really great person, you know, I'm actually quite good at this, you know, like, wow, you know, and just give yourself what you feel like you want to hear, and best believe you start hearing from people as well. But yeah,
Love that.
that's me, man. That's me.
Awesome.
I've got a bit of a barbecue going downstairs there, and
Yeah.
yeah, you know, looking
Awesome.
forward to that. You know, so
Awesome.
that's one thing to everyone. Enjoy wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Enjoy yourself and be. And yeah, that's me, man. That's me. For me.
Amazing. Well, I will let you go. And guys, we will be back next week for the next episode. So
Yeah.
we will look forward to talking to you again real soon. And I will now play the outro. Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Unorthodox Perspectives.
If you liked today's episode on the show, please subscribe and leave a comment below.
All relevant links for today's episode of the podcast can be found in the description, so please check them out.
And we will be back next week with another episode. Until then, have an awesome week.